Welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm Richard Schnyderite, the Nittany Nation publisher. We're also partnered with Penn State Rivals, and I'm the publisher over there. Dylan's the head writer, senior writer, whatever you want to call him. Dylan, what's going on, man?
Not much, Richard. It's been a busy yet slow recruiting-wise last few weeks, but it's about to pick up here in the next few weeks with March just right around the corner. So definitely a great time if our listeners are not subscribed to Nittany Nation to go out there and subscribe, because going to have plenty of recruiting information, and spring ball is also right around the corner starting up there. So going to be plenty of information going around on Nittany Nation over the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm tired of this dead period. This whole month of February is just boring. There's no visits. There's nothing going on. But we're at the end finally. It's getting a little exciting. Kenneth Woseley just dropped his top list of schools. Obviously, we have a futurecast in for him. For those of you that don't know, Kenneth Woseley, Kenny Woseley, whatever you want to call him. He's from Imhotep Charter over in Philly. He's got a million offers, 22 to be exact. Not really a million, but pretty close. A 5.8 4-star for Rivals, 178th prospect in the country. It seems like Penn State's in the lead here. Am I wrong?
No, I agree with you. I mean, we put our futurecast in all the way back on, at least mine, back on January 28th, coming off his junior day visit to Happy Valley. It seemed like Penn State has been in the lead for a while there, and that visit really kind of, to a degree, sealed the deal. I know a lot of people inside Lash were a little surprised he didn't commit coming off that visit. But here we are now, a little bit close to a month later, and it sounds like this could be coming to an end any point now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just looking at the visitor tally we have on his profile. He's been to campus 3 times in the past, less than 10 months, 8 months.
Yeah,
Jeez.
He's been a frequent visitor for sure.
Yeah, and it wouldn't shock me if he got back to campus pretty soon, but it does sound like Penn State's in a pretty good spot here. You said, you had a futurecast since late January in for him. This is just big for Penn State if they're able to pull this one off, not only because Terry Smith continues to prove why he's a great recruiter, but also you get back in the Philadelphia area and Imhotep Charter produces. Like, you know it better than anyone.
Yeah, no, I mean, that he's a very good player, don't get me wrong, but making sure you're staying in Imhotep Charter is just as big if you're the Nittany Lions, especially with names like Zamir Mathis, the potential 5-star defensive end in 2025, as well as running back Jabri Wallace-Coleman, who's currently committed to Georgia, but who has also been talking to Penn State quite a bit over the last few months since his commitment. But yeah, if you're Penn State, even beyond those guys, you want to stay in Imhotep Charter as much as possible because they just produce talent at a ridiculous level. 4-star defensive tackle Jashir Winnington, another guy that Penn State has been in conversations with, currently committed to Pittsburgh. So definitely never bad to be in on Imhotep.
Yeah, and piggyback off that a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about Terry Smith and his recruiting and his connections to Philadelphia, because he seems like the main point man in terms of that little pipeline they're getting going.
Yeah, Terry Smith, I mean, he knows everybody, I think, in the state of Pennsylvania or close to it, it seems. Just any school you talk to, any coaches, any players in Pennsylvania, they always seem to bring up Terry Smith. But Terry's been really just a godsend for Penn State in the Philadelphia region over the last few years, especially down in Philly. Connects really well with all the kids coming out of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, no surprise, he's from out that way. He coached at Gateway, but he has really taken over Philadelphia as well and has become one of the really top recruiters in the country when it comes to recruiting the city of Philadelphia. And especially when you're talking about these cornerbacks, he hits a home run with each and every one. I think Penn State's in it with some kids that normally they wouldn't be just because of the relationships they're building with Smith. Now, Woseley isn't that type of player. This is a kid that fits the Penn State mold, but he's definitely an integral part to Penn State's recruiting overall, but especially defensively, and what they've been doing at the cornerback position the last few years, turning out names like Joey Porter Jr., Kalen King could be the best cornerback in the country next year. And the list goes on. I think it's only going to get even better for Penn State at that position going forward.
Now, talk to me a little bit more about cornerbacks and Woseley, and kind of how he would fit in Penn State. Is he just like an outside guy? Is he, I know my personal opinion, he's an inside guy, but what do you see?
No, at his size, at 5'11", 165, you probably, definitely lean towards being an inside guy. It's hard to tell how fast he really is. We don't have any hard concrete number on his 40 time or anything like that, but on tape, it looks like he has good speed. He's somebody whose tape I've watched quite a bit. I know a couple of people who attended his games regularly and have gone to scout him in person. I haven't been able to do that just yet, but what I keep hearing about him is the speed is pretty solid. The athleticism is good. He shows strong awareness. He's versatile. If it doesn't work out for him in the slot, he can play on the boundary. He can play the field, whatever he needs to do. He could really play, which at his size could be advantage. I mean, 5'11" is pretty good height. A little undersized on the weight category, 165, but even beyond just being a DB, he sets the edge pretty well. He knows how to get into that backfield, can rush the passer. I think he's not necessarily a player you look at the tape and he jumps off, wows you in every single play. But I think what you're getting in Woseley potentially is a very good overall player who can do a little bit of everything. And as he continues to develop, can turn into a nice piece in the secondary. If it is going to be Penn State or wherever he does end up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it kind of seems like nowadays, like the better athletes, they're always kind of the smaller guys, the speedier guys are moving towards that slot position. So
absolutely,
this would probably be a really good get in terms of covering that. And look at guys like Johnny Dixon. Johnny Dixon was playing a little slot this year too. Like,
absolutely. And the other thing is, and I would say this, listeners of the Penn State 365 podcast have heard me say this before, but cornerback is one of those positions with Terry Smith where even if it doesn't make sense to you, to me, or to any of the fans, you have to trust what Terry Smith is doing at the cornerback position because all he gets there is results, and especially so over the last 3 years. So I think with this, even if you're not totally wowed, you just trust Terry Smith, trust the process per se, and what Penn State's been doing at that position.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to see after this draft, especially with Joey Porter going top 20, top 15 maybe. Yeah, they're just producing talent nonstop, and the cornerbacks and the secondary overall too, I guess.
Absolutely.
But moving on from that, there's another big name that we also just future casted over at Penn State Rivals or Nittany Nation, whatever the hell you want to call it. Kari Jackson, number 193 in the country. Technically, now he's from Michigan, but he played at IMG last year. Now he's back in Michigan in his hometown of West Bloomfield. Just talk to me a little bit about Kari Jackson and his recruitment and what made you future cast him.
Another kid who I think Penn State's been leaning for a while now. I actually was pretty close to putting in this future cast for quite a while now. Through we text pretty constantly about recruiting, or if you ask our other co-hosts, Anthony and Marty, I've been pretty high on the fact that I thought Jackson was going to end up in Penn State's 2024 recruiting class at some point. He has not yet, but he is scheduled to make a commitment, I am told, next Tuesday, I believe it is, February 28th. And with that, I did put a future cast in for Penn State. He was on campus last month for one of the Nittany Lions junior days in a recruitment that went very well. In a visit that went very well for him. He connected very well with Manny Diaz. That relationship has only strengthened over the last couple months. Recruiting coordinator Alan Zamitis has also been an integral part of this recruitment as well. He's done a bang-up job with Jackson. He talks to Jackson quite a bit, daily basis on things even outside of football, what life is like at Penn State as an athlete or just in general. So those two have been a huge part of this. But also that visit, he was able to come see Penn State again. I believe that was not his first time on campus. I believe he's been here a few times. Third time. I couldn't remember off the top of my head. But he got back to campus, got to see the coaching staff again, got to connect with Coach Franklin again, Diaz, which that is obviously probably the biggest one of the bigger factors here. And I got to say, Manny Diaz coming into Penn State was not known to be always, a cleanup recruiter. He always well respected as a recruiter, but never a home run hitter per se. But over his time in Happy Valley so far, we have seen him do a pretty damn good job. I mean, you look back in last year's class with Tony Rojas, but also Tamir Robinson, because Tamir Robinson had a great relationship with Brent Pry before Pry left for Virginia Tech, and was close to committing to Penn State before Pry left, but then had to rebuild a relationship this time with Manny Diaz, and Diaz did a great job at doing that. Landed Tamir Robinson, he landed Tony Rojas, also, who we know visited Georgia, visited Clemson, visited Miami. Penn State went up against a pretty hefty top other three there to land Rojas. He got Specca earlier this cycle from Michigan and Notre Dame, and then also now with Kari Jackson potentially, whose top 7 did not include the in-state Wolverines or Spartans, but it was still a very respectable, very good top 7. Let me read it off here to you in a second. Cincinnati, Maryland, Missouri, Penn State, UCF, Wisconsin, Stanford. It may not be a gauntlet of competitors, but there are some pretty damn good programs in that list. Wisconsin obviously is on a great run right now, recruiting rise with the Luke Fickell hire. Stanford's always hard to recruit, no matter how well they're playing on the field because of the education. Maryland is always a challenge. And Cincinnati is, even though they have had a coaching changes, entering the Power 5 and is coming off back-to-back really good seasons. So if Penn State can win this recruitment next week, this would be a nice pickup for Penn State, to say the least.
Yeah, no, lots to digest there. But just to start, I mean, the fact that neither Michigan school's in it is kind of a little crazy to me, number one, because he's been to Michigan State twice or 3 times in the past year. Been to Michigan several times, so that was a little shocking. But he's also not afraid to go away from home either, which it seems like, because he did go to IMG for that year. He was inexperienced. He had 100-something tackles for IMG, which don't ask me why he left. But hey, I get it. Back to your hometown, finish out your high school with your buddies, your friends, all that nonsense.
Yeah, if you can perform at that high of a level at a place like IMG where you're playing top-tier elite talent week in and week out, it says something about the player you are. And he's a guy, obviously, I mean, really solid size. I think he's at, 6'1", 220. Solid size, athleticism is good. I think he was probably in the top 4 or 5 guys overall for Penn State at linebacker. Again, like Woseley, may not be the most flashiest player athleticism-wise or this or that, but just a very sound, strong overall player that I think you get on campus, especially with Penn State's development in the weight room and conditioning-wise. They've done great jobs there. This is the type of kid you take who has a strong foundation. You can make those upgrades per se when it comes to the athleticism or speed or size, and then the finished product could be pretty special.
Yeah, no, I know. They obviously call it linebacker U for a reason, but Speck is committed. Let's go back. Let's rewind to 2023 real quick. Rojas signed. Robinson signed. Who am I missing? There's a third linebacker in that class.
Keys.
Oh, Kavion Keys, who people underrate the hell out of for some reason. I love his tape. I think he's a freak. I think if he played at IMG or any other school, he's a
and I forgot to mention when I was going off about Manny Diaz, another recruitment that Penn State had to really battle for Keys against North Carolina, where he's committed forever, and Texas A&M. So, I mean, another just great example of how strong a recruiter Manny Diaz has been for Penn State, which, again, it wasn't his reputation coming here. His reputation was being a great defensive coordinator, but he's done both.
Yeah, but I mean, you get those 3 in the 2023 class, and you start off this class with Specca at 209, and you get Kari Jackson at 183. Yep. Holy shit. Who's next?
Yeah, they've just been doing just a fantastic job, and you're right. Who is next? And Nittany Nation subscribers would know on Friday morning we posted an article talking about how Penn State is in such a good spot for linebackers in this 2024 recruiting class. Even beyond Kari Jackson, you got names like Jalen Harvey, who we do have ranked as a 4-star linebacker here at Rivals, 203rd nationally. But I think we both think that he is most likely going to end up on the edge at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have number 57 nationally, Aaron Childs. Number 157 inside linebacker, Christopher Jones. Jackson, Mississippi outside linebacker, Jamonte Waller, who Penn State is in, I think, a really good spot for. It's going to be hard to keep up this momentum and land him out of the South, especially now that the likes of Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, LSU have entered that recruitment. But they're in a good spot there. And then you got Brian Robinson, who out in Ohio seems to be leaning towards Michigan, but that recruitment is still open. We'll see what Penn State could do here. But, I mean, you look at that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other linebackers, including Kari Jackson, that Penn State could possibly add in this 2024 class. We think they're probably going to take 3, so we're only probably going to talk about taking one more of these here. But when you have that pick, I mean, you gotta love it if you're Penn State, because no matter what here, as long as you land one of these other guys here, you're gonna end up with a pretty damn good linebacker room in this class.
Yeah, no kidding. One, I say 1 to 2, just because, like you said before, Harvey it's already 6'2". Like, he says he's 245, but he's probably more than that at this point. So he's an edge guy, like, without a doubt in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a possibility that if, say, they do land Jackson, but then you land a guy like Christopher Jones, but late in the cycle, Aaron Childs once in for some reason, or perhaps he committed elsewhere and then it was thinking different. I'm not sure that he's the type of talent that you could necessarily turn down. So, yeah, I definitely think there's the possibility of 4, depending on the circumstances of things. But I would say at least 3 here in this cycle.
Yeah. So now we talked about linebackers, we talked about defensive backs. I want to turn it around to the opposite side of the ball. I know we're supposed to make this one a little short, but we're going to go a little long here on this one. But let's talk about the first official visitor, I guess, a confirmed official visitor of 2024 cycle. Caleb Odom, I know we have him as listed as a wide receiver, but he's probably a tight end at the next level. Depends on how he grows, I guess. But kid out of Georgia, Carrollton, Georgia, 4-star, top 50 tight end, wide receiver. Talk to me a little bit more about him.
Yeah, so Penn State is recruiting him as a tight end. He's been talking with Ty Howell a ton over the last few months. Penn State offered him in November, and by January, they were already making a pretty big impact in his recruitment. In fact, he's told Rivals national recruiting analyst Ryan Wright back in January that he was already thinking about taking an official visit to Penn State. So this comes as really no surprise. But 6'5", 215, I mean, that's elite size. That doesn't grow on trees. If he does make the move to tight end the next level, it's very good size for a tight end. But say they want to keep him a wide receiver, that is terrific size to have a wide receiver. 4.6 40-yard dash, for which at that size is pretty impressive. Looks on tape to have strong hands, good athleticism, nice catch radius. Again, kind of a full package type player here. I mean, 4-star recruit. We don't have him ranked within the top 250, but this is a kid who's been rising up the rankings the last few months. He recently became a 4-star recruit. So I still think there's a chance that he becomes a top 250 player in the country here in the near future. In terms of other competition here, Florida, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Vanderbilt are some early contenders. I'm sure some others will pop up here, but definitely have to like Penn State's chances, especially now that they've locked in their official visit first. That does say something about them and this recruitment. But overall, really solid player overall. And production going up against really strong talent down in Georgia, plays for a very good high school in Carrollton, 64 receptions, 1,100 yards, 13 touchdowns. Nothing to scoff at when you're talking about elite Georgia players going up against fellow elite talent, because Carrollton plays some pretty big name schools down there in the Peach State.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I want to end this pod or wrap it back up with kind of what we started with. Spring's right around the corner.
Yep.
Spring ball's around the corner, which means one thing. It means that there's going to be a bunch of recruits on campus.
Absolutely.
Now we have a list kind of growing a little bit. I don't know if you have it pulled up or if you want me to
I'll pull it up
over
quickly. You can begin going over it. I'll pull it up.
So it's very Jersey heavy so far. Khalil Ahmad, new director of recruiting personnel or what, I don't know. They just give these guys titles at this point. It's kind of insane. And then you get to promote it and then they just add something to that title. But Khalil Ahmad came over from Syracuse. He was director of high school relations over there. He's a big Jersey guy. He's got a ton of connections. I can't understate that enough. I've been hyping it up on our boards ever since they hired him. They hired him a week later. They land Jalen Matthews, who's number 77.
And they're already off to a great start with Amari Gaines as well in that 2025 class out of New Jersey.
So that's probably 2 4-stars right there in 2025. And we're not even there yet. We're not even close to 2025. He's doing a hell of a job with 2024. One of those visitors I want to highlight real quick before I go over the list. Jordan Thomas, 4-star, number 2 in Jersey for 2024. Don Bosco Prep. Defensive tackle. That's all you guys on the boards want to hear about is defensive tackles. Well, here you go, maybe. This could be the one. I'm hearing that Penn State's in the lead for him right now. He's massive. He's huge. He moves great for 6'6", 295. And he did a hell of a pass rusher from the interior as well. He packs a mean punch. And my biggest thing with linemen, whether it's offense or defense, I want that guy to be a mean son of a bitch. I'm just going to say. And he is one mean son of a bitch.
Yeah, you need that dog mentality in your defensive tackles and defensive linemen overall, and even your offensive linemen. If you're in the trenches, you need to have that mentality that you want to drive people into the ground until the whistle blows. If you're an offensive lineman, that means, pancaking everybody. If you're a defensive lineman, you want to get to that quarterback and make sure he feels it every time you hit him. I absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah, but other than that, there's a couple other interesting names in here. One interesting one that people aren't really talking about enough is, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, so I apologize. Sinai DeGraffenreich out of Atlantic City High School. So the high school, just number one, isn't recruited very heavily. And this is where a guy like Khalil Ahmad has enough connections throughout the state that if he knows a guy and that knows a guy that knows a guy, they're probably going to get a Penn State offer if they're good enough. And this is one of those cases where like most people didn't know about him. And I'm pretty good with Jersey recruits. I did not know who the hell this was. I looked at his tape and I'm like, holy shit, this kid's pretty good. He's a little on the smaller side. He's like 6 foot, 5'11", 5'10", maybe even. But this is like where Penn State's going to sneak in and probably try to land a couple guys. I think overall Penn State's going to get back in Jersey heavy. They have a ton of big names coming to campus. And Teron Hale, who loves Penn State so far, he's been there a couple times. A New York kid it's New Jersey. It's like right there pretty much. I think Caden Brown, who's a big Penn State guy out of Erasmus Hall. And Latsier Brooks, who we're not talking about enough. 2025 out of Millville. He's technically a running back. He was a running back, now he's a wide receiver. He's going to be a receiver, slot receiver at the next level. That kid's tape is amazing. And like one of our writers, Clay Sauerteig, who used to be our lead beat writer, he texted me about this kid. And I'm like, Clay, you don't watch that much recruiting tape. Like, what the hell? And he goes, I don't know. That kid's just good. Like, he's really good. And I'm like, yeah, I've been saying this. He's phenomenal, and he wants to stay close to home. So that would be a huge, huge, huge get. And it's just big to get him on campus.
And schools around the country are beginning to notice how good he is. I mean, only 6 offers, but it's a pretty damn good 6 offers. I mean, the 3 that really pop out obviously are Georgia, Penn State, and Tennessee, but Pitt, Rutgers, and West Virginia, I mean, are 3 really, solid regional offers to have. But Georgia is very much one of those schools now, like in Alabama, that if a kid offers them, we may know about them, but if Georgia offers a kid, it opens eyes nationally. So I'm sure a lot more offers are going to be rolling in for Brooks here in the meantime. But yeah, for Penn State to get him on campus again this early in his recruitment is going to be huge, especially if he does want to stay home, close to home, because I mean, he has a chance to be a very elite talent here. Potentially, 4 high 4-star prospect down the road. So definitely one that you want to get on campus as much as possible early on, because you know he's going to end up taking visits to these Georgias, Tennessees, Ohio State, so on and
Yep.
so forth. You want to make sure you have a lot of momentum going into those visits. You've built yourself up to withstand any type of push those other schools may bring. Not that Penn State can't compete with those schools on the recruiting trail. We have seen them do it, but it's still never easy to go out and beat a Georgia, a Tennessee, Ohio State, so on and so forth on the recruiting trail on a regular basis for these type of prospects.
Yeah, and then there's a couple other names on this list too that I just keep looking up, like Owen Streibig, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Wisconsin offensive lineman. He's massive. I know he doesn't have a ranking yet. He's 6'7", 290, 280. Depends on whatever site you're looking at. I know everyone likes to think it's what he has a futurecast Wisconsin, and he doesn't even have a Wisconsin offer. So put it like that. But he's coming to Penn State for a visit, and I think Coach Trout is just on fire lately. We don't talk. I know we kind of talked about it after the 2023 class ended, but it still extends because Cooper Cousins was such an early commit. So I mean, I wouldn't put it past Penn if they. Oh no, he's 2025.
Yeah,
right?
2025.
So he's got another year. Okay, so he's got a long way to go still, but they're just doing a hell of a job on the offensive line recruiting too, and I don't feel like we talk about that one enough.
No, I agree. I did a similar article a couple of weeks ago on how they're doing on the offensive line in the 2024 recruiting class. They're off to a phenomenal start with a boatload of kids, including two that we have future casts in for: Kevin Haywood out of Archbishop Wood in Philadelphia, and William Satterwright out of Archbishop Hoban in Ohio. Satterwright is now a top 100 prospect nationally. Haywood is top 250 prospect nationally. They're off to a good start as well with Liam Andrews up in Massachusetts. That one is going to be a dogfight, I think, until Andrews does commit. Satterwright and Haywood, obviously much more confident in Penn State's chances there, having future casting for both. But kind of like linebacker, Penn State's just doing a great job early on at offensive line, which is, if you're a Penn State fan, you have to love offensive line. Linebacker have been two spots that the Nittany Lions have struggled at, always, hidden on the recruiting trail. Now they've done a good job the last cycle or two, but you have to continue to build that depth, continue to stack those classes at those key positions, especially at the offensive line. And they're well on their way to doing that in 2024, and they got off to a great start in 2025 with Jalen Matthews. So yeah, Troutwine, for somebody who coming into last year, I wouldn't say was on the hot seat, but a lot of people were questioning if he was the right guy for the job. Seeing what he did with the offensive line this past season, now what he's doing recruiting wise, I think his seat is pretty safe for the foreseeable future, especially if they keep recruiting at this high of a level and the talent obviously continues to develop on the field.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he's going to have a top 10 pick maybe next year.
Olu, the ceiling is incredibly high for Olu, and if he stays healthy this year, I think there's a chance he goes top 5 even.
Yeah, what's that Michael Jordan quote? The ceiling is the roof, or the roof is the ceiling, or something like that. Yeah, that's close enough. That kind of counts. But all right, that's pretty much all we got today. Before I sign off or let you give your final thoughts, I do want to mention Penn State plays Wisconsin this weekend and on the ice hockey rink. Senior day. We got a bunch of senior profiles up on the site. Shout out to that crew. They've done a hell of a job this year, between Catherine, between Jacob, between Caitlin even helping out. And yeah, they've done so much work on this hockey team. If you don't follow us for hockey, like you're missing out big time, because there's like 7 to 12 articles a week, and I'm like, dude, hold on, I got to edit this one.
This is a great time too, because Penn State's top 10 in the Pairwise rankings, possible chance at a Big Ten tournament title here, and if they can do that, perhaps get into the NCAA ice hockey tournament as well, which I believe one of the regionals is in Allentown this year. So if they can make it there, it seems like a pretty good bet that they would be playing close to home. So definitely a great time to come follow along our hockey coverage, which is only going to continue to grow as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of other other Olympic sports. We got baseball covered.
We
don't
have
talk about
every
this yet,
sport
Kat.
pretty much covered. If we don't right now, we're going to have pretty much every sport covered. I mean, while football and basketball may be, what brings the money, we cover Penn State athletics, not just Penn State football and basketball. We cover Penn State athletics. There's a lot more out there than just those two, major sports. And we've been showing love to all these different sports throughout the year, and we're going to continue to do so. And it's, I think, become one of our great trademarks that not many other sites in our industry, period, do, is give love to a little bit of everybody.
Yeah, and like I was saying, we got a couple baseball writers. I know Catherine and Caitlin are going to handle baseball this season, and honestly, I saw that Miami win on last Friday, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, oh my god,
that was impressive to go out and almost take two. I know they lost the series, but to almost take 2 of 3 from a top 25 Miami team is pretty impressive way to start. We'll see if they can continue the good start this weekend.
Yeah, this weekend they play in the USA Baseball Complex or Classic or whatever. Yeah. They make a new name for every whatever. Northern Illinois, they're going to face a doubleheader, and then they're playing Maine, then Monmouth. I wouldn't be surprised if they got 4 game sweeps a little much, but 3 out of 3 and 1. I'd be pretty impressed.
Before we go, I know we kind of just keep adding topics, but we would be not doing our job if we did not mention the men's basketball team making a late season push for the NCAA tournament. They, were a bubble team for the longest time, fell out of bubble contention, but now have won 3 straight, picked up a much needed quad 1 victory over Ohio State last weekend, which, by the way, last night. By the way, I love that you can be under 500, still be a quad 1 victory. But
the Big Ten is super overrated.
But they pick up a big win over Ohio State, winners of 3 straight. They still have a tough road ahead of them if they're going to make the NCAA tournament. But every win right now counts, and if they can, pick up 2 wins in the Big Ten tournament, perhaps they could find their way into the March Madness here next month.
That's true. I know they face Rutgers on Sunday. I don't know when our next pod will be, probably next week. We're going to try to do this weekly. Going forward, this Rutgers team just got beat to hell by Michigan on Thursday. Very ugly game. They're injured. So, Penn State has a chance. And this is a home game. Like, I don't know how big of a crowd they're expecting, but I'm hearing it should be a pretty solid crowd. Students are hyped and amped. Yep. And Penn State, as long as they're shooting well, and Jalen Pickett's not shooting like he did in the first half, and he's shooting like he did in the second half of Ohio State, they have a shot.
Yep.
They have a really good shot.
Rutgers, Northwestern, and Maryland left, so it will be tough. And it seems like the magic number to really to elevate your chances of making the tournament is about 20 wins. They're now sitting at 17. So if you can pick up even 1 win out of these next 3, and then roll off 2 wins in the tournament, or perhaps make a run to the Big Ten tournament championship game, I think we could talk about the Nittany Lions going marching next month. But it is still an uphill climb, to say the least. It's going to be tough. With 2 of those games left being at home, they are, I believe, 12-3 at home this year, so that is in their favor. But definitely going to be a really tough stretch there. 3 of the better teams in the Big Ten this season.
Yeah, for sure. I know it's a Q2, but this Q2 might be worth more than the Q1 they just had, because Ohio State might fall out of Q1 territory and Rutgers might bounce into Q1 territory. It's weird. The whole quadrant sec thing is just fucked, but whatever. We'll talk about that another day. But anything else?
No, I think so. We covered pretty much everything we could in this episode. And yeah, like you said, we're going to be definitely going to be doing these once per week, perhaps more if there's enough to cover. And yeah, we have big plans for the podcast. We have big plans for the site going over the next few months. So, like I said at the top of the podcast, never been a better time to subscribe over at Nittany Nation, because it is going to be very busy on the recruiting trail, off the recruiting trail, really between now and next February. So it's going to be pretty nonstop once we hit March.
So stay tuned for a bunch of more Penn State content, whether that be football, basketball, baseball, hockey,
Wrestling.
anything that's Penn State athletics. Wrestling, I keep forgetting about. Geez, that I just assumed they're going to win it all again. So like,
It's the greatest dynasty in
whatever.
sports.
Yeah, it's honestly it's up there. You might have to get an article going about that. Well, we'll have to see. But for me and Dylan, this is the Penn State 365 podcast. If you don't already subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting network. Give us 5 stars because why not? We deserve it. We just worked hard to do this. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So stay tuned. We'll have another episode next week, and we are.